Chapter 53. Rhys was completely dumbfounded to be pointed out by Edward. Never in his wildest dreams had he expected Edward to do so. He didn't do anything, but somehow he got involved. Tell me honestly, did you have anything to do with my dad's death? Edward glared and shouted. No. It had nothing to do with me. I don't know anything. Rhys shook his head in fear, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. You don't know, or you don't want to tell. Edward narrowed his eyes menacingly. Mr. Spanner, I really have no idea. This is all a misunderstanding. Rhys started to plead, every inch of his body was begging for mercy. Although he knew Edward was taking the opportunity to settle their personal grudge, he couldn't say a word. Huh. It seems like you won't spill without some pressure. Come, beat him up. Edward ordered, and two officers immediately took action. Wait. James suddenly stopped them. Do you know who he is? He's Chris Nolan of Nolan Pharmaceuticals. He's also very close with Mr. Anderson. If you dared touch a hair on him, Mr. Anderson would not let it slide. There. Uncle Travis, you heard it. This guy is related to Hunter Anderson. He must be one of the murderers. Edward suddenly became excited, as if he had caught Rhys admitting to the crime. So you're Hunter's accomplice that killed my brother? Travis glared at him. There were two main suspects in this case. One was Hunter Anderson, and the other was Dahlia Nicholson. This man was connected to both of these people, so he was obviously involved. No. It wasn't me. Rhys was slightly startled, and he quickly shook his head. I have nothing to do with Mr. Anderson. I don't know anything at all. This whole thing was a misunderstanding from start to finish. Rhys, why do you have to be afraid of them? You have Mr. Anderson to help you. They wouldn't dare to touch you. James proclaimed proudly. Shut the fuck up. Rhys was so terrified he threw his arms around and landed a slap on James' face. Mr. Anderson was nothing. This guy was a general commanding thousands of troops. Who could stop someone like him if he goes mad? Rhys, why did you hit me? James held onto his face in pain. Didn't you give Mr. Anderson a phone call to save my sister when Sir Spanner was messing with her? Did I say something wrong? Fuck you. How dare you speak nonsense? Shut up. Rhys was about to cry. Beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. Was this guy an idiot? Couldn't he read the room? We have a witness and physical evidence. I'd like to see you explain yourself. Edward gloated. He just wanted to take advantage of the situation. He didn't expect to actually get results. Edward, this guy is bullshitting. I didn't do anything. It was a complete coincidence that Mr. Anderson showed up that day. They were the ones giving me all the credit willingly. Rhys had no choice but to tell the truth as the situation started to get out of hand. Huh? Didn't you help my sister? James was very confused. In your dreams. Rhys berated angrily. Who am I to request for Mr. Anderson? You should really use your brains. If I had that power, I wouldn't go bankrupt. What? Bankrupt? The entire Nicholson family was shocked by his words. They couldn't react for a moment. At this point, I won't bother to hide anymore. Dustin was right. Nolan Pharmaceuticals is under investigation, and we're going bankrupt. Now, it's just an empty shell. Rhys could no longer be bothered. He would do anything to be set apart from the Nicholson family. You're not joking, are you? You said the company was going public. How could it go bankrupt? Florence was dumbfounded. Going public? That's bullshit. I just said that to fool all of you. There's no such thing on earth. I wouldn't even think of you if the dividends existed. Stop dreaming. Rhys had a grim expression on his face. He was blabbing about everything at this moment. He would do anything to draw a line between himself and the Nicholson family to save his life. You mean you've been lying to us? Florence was shocked and in disbelief. That's right. I just wanted to snag some money and run away. Who knew you'd be dumb enough to believe it? Chris sneered. You monster. How could you cheat us of our money? Pay us back. Florence shrieked and jumped at Chris. That was her retirement money. She had invested everything to get the bonus. Who knew it would all be in vain? It was as if her whole world had collapsed. You sly wolf. We trusted you. How could you cheat us of our money? You're an animal. Give us back the money. The others were also agitated and started to protest, but they were quickly forced back by the armed guards. Only Florence was quick enough to leave a scratch mark on Chris's face. The money is gone. Truth be told, I've transferred all the funds overseas. You should just give up. Chris came completely clean. His words were like a knife, stabbed through their chests. They had never felt more regret. If they had known this, they wouldn't have been greedy and believed in Chris's nonsense. Why would you do this? Dahlia frowned in confusion. She never expected Chris's capital increase would be a scam. Moreover, Dustin was being kind when he tried to tell her the Nolan family was going bankrupt. However, no one believed him. This was really a big slap in the face. Why? Of course, it was for money. I'll have women when I have money. You should all know this. Chris snickered. So the partnership with the Harmon family had nothing to do with you either? Dahlia asked tentatively. That's right. Chris admitted to it plainly. My dad never called the Harmon family. They made the decision themselves. I just took advantage of the situation. The funny thing was you all believed me without a doubt. Dahlia was completely dumbfounded. Everything turned out to be a misunderstanding. Chris never helped her in any way and even cheated her of her money. The worst part was that he had taken credit for everything and kept her in the dark. He had such wild ambitions. The question was, who had helped her behind her back if it wasn't Chris?